Good morning. Welcome to another edition of Badass Marketing. I am once again joined by my lovely co-host, Angela Duns. Angela, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Things are going well. And I'm glad that you're alive and well also this morning.
Right, right after the giant cookie incident apparently last night, where yeah, a little too much sugar apparently. But thank you for those sentiments of not dying. Um, so obviously I'm eating cookies, which means we must be in the midst of the holiday season, or I just like to eat cookies. Could be both. But the reality is we're in the midst of the holiday season. And just to complicate things, we're seeing, rollouts of new technology that have huge impacts as we go into this holiday season. And some of the things that I'm talking about is Google just released a Gemini-enhanced version of Bard. ChatGPT has sort of rolled up some new features. We can talk about, the use of Dolly. You love Dolly. So we'll talk about Gemini. We'll talk about ChatGPT. I know that you want to talk about Second Brain. So we got lots of stuff to talk about. I don't know how directly related this is to the holiday season, but it's just kind of what's going on and what's being flooded into the market. We're seeing all kinds of advances. I mean, AI is just, kicking and screaming its way through 2023. And I think it's going to be, and I think we're only at the tip of the iceberg. I can genuinely say that I'm somewhat amazed at sort of the progress that it's been making, because ChatGPT has been around for a year, and a year ago we started playing with it and the responses were like I mean, it was like but now it's writing some seriously quality content and really a valuable tool. We can talk about Dolly, which is creates AI generated images for whatever reason can't spell worth a shit, which just drives me crazy. Because I really like the tool, but anything that has text in it is the generative AI for whatever reason creates text and then can't figure out how to spell. So of all things, you would think AI could figure out how to spell, right? And it can't.
There a
Uh,
dictionary or a thesaurus in there?
because it's creating an image, so that I think the premise there is that the text is part of the image and not specifically text, but it incorporates text, and then it misspells it, and it misspells it horribly.
That is
So
aggravating.
it's just like, and I've tried and I've asked it like to fix it, or focus on spelling or fix the spelling, and it's like, no, it's an image. You know what I mean? So while these advances are amazing, there's still some serious problems with AI. And I think that's a prime example of for whatever reason, Dolly can't spell. I don't know why, but it just can't spell. So all kinds of things. So I'm happy to let you sort of jump in and tell us a little bit about your thoughts on Second Brain and all that, and then we'll sort of go through the list of some of the things that we're seeing and we're working on and what we're excited about.
Well, it's a really interesting concept. It's like creating a repository for all of the things that you want to work on and all the resources that you have collected. I don't know about you, but when I read something that I think is interesting, I want to save it and go back to it later and possibly write a newsletter or a post or something else on that. And
Okay, can I
I,
ask you a question?
yeah,
I do that as well. I mean, like I see stuff, I'm like, oh my God, this is great. I'm going to bookmark it or I'll save it and all that kind of stuff. And then about a year from then, I have to go through all my, my bookmarks are huge. I have to go through all my bookmarks and delete all the stuff that like I never did go back to read. Do you go back and actually generally ever use the stuff that you save like that?
I do. I mean,
Okay, good. You're better than
not
me, because
all of
I
them.
do the same thing, but I never use it and I never get back to it.
Well, and research says that most people don't. But
Yeah.
when I'm going to write the newsletter, I have a email category and I toss everything into there. And seriously, I read the headlines and I'm like, oh, that one would be an interesting one to talk about. I'll read that article, get myself back in that space, and then I'll write my own thoughts on that. So I actually do use a lot of them. Um, Not all of them, definitely, but I have a couple of really geeky clients. They're really fascinating the way their brains work and the things that they're up to. And one of them has introduced this idea of second brain to me. There's a book out about it. I can't remember exactly who the author is right now, but there are lots of different apps out there that can sort of collect all of them. And then what they can do is if you put in a prompt, they can read all of these articles and summarize them. So um, there is some sort of an app that's read something. I'm going to get a hold of that stuff for you to put it in the notes for people. But this idea of being able to put all of your thoughts and all of your resources and all the articles that you clip and the images that you save into one place and have them be stored in a way that you can trace your line of thought or pull things up specifically, but really using it like a second brain. And I know that one of the concepts behind it is we're overwhelmed with micro decisions these days. And if we can do some sort of a brain dump and get some of this stuff out in a place where we can retrieve it again, then we free up our brain for more creativity. And I just think it's a fascinating concept.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is I'm not using that tool, but a lot of the concepts you're talking about, we're actually using AI for and using AI, different tools. But we're saying, go back and look at these 5 things and then summarize it and then give me the new insights. Give me some actionable insights that I can use to develop content going forward or, respond. So, we're doing that. We have to prompt it, so there isn't a repository like you're suggesting, which would probably be very helpful to have that repository. Like I said, I save a ton of stuff and then like it goes nowhere. So I just I'm moving
Hard to
forward. I'm moving
find
forward.
it or retrace your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of crazy because it's I was looking for something this morning. I was actually just looking for an email. Wasn't that exciting, but I was looking for an email and like I had to go reverse engineer the thought process of how I would have communicated with this person because I couldn't remember the person's name, but I wanted to find that person. But I knew who like conceptually I knew who I was looking for, but I couldn't remember her name. So I had to sort of reverse engineer how I would have had a conversation with her in order to figure out like what to search for in order to find her email. And I was able to so I couldn't find her email for the life of me, but again, couldn't remember the woman's name. So we're sort of, like that doesn't really help. Like find me an email, but I don't know what it is.
That's
AI is good, but it ain't that
so
good.
typical.
Yeah. So, but it was like I had to sort of, like where you're like you have to go through your reverse engineer your thought process. Like, what was I thinking when I was talking to this woman? And we were having a conversation around cinema, actually, and so I had to like reverse
Fun.
engineer the cinema discussion to be like, oh right, this is why, and then I did find the woman's email ultimately, and who she was, but I had to like sort of reverse engineer my thinking to like what was the stream of thought that I was having. Sorry, I hear something like what was the stream of thought that I was having when I would have contacted this individual who I couldn't remember in order to figure out who she was. And I was able to do that, thankfully, relatively quickly. It took me about 5 minutes, but it was kind of interesting. Like, because a lot of times I'll be, thinking about something and then like, how did I land here? And like, if you, like,
The bane of the
why?
creative existence.
Why am I in this particular spot at this particular moment? And just sort of like, like, okay, so I'm thinking about frogs because I was thinking about green and then I was thinking about like colors, like sort of, have to go back and like, really, that's the path my brain went down, which is a very scary place. I can assure you, cookies or not, sugar rush or not, that my brain's a scary place, but it is kind of fun to, you just go back and like how did I get down this like what little crazy little mind
Back
map did I go
alley.
down? Yeah, back out. You know, it's, AI is cool, but it's still nothing compared to the human brain and sort of the weird things that the human brain does. I think AI is probably a little more organized than our brain is. You know,
And that's where I think it has a great use. And I did remember two of the different apps. One of them is Readwise, and it actually does use AI and it can connect to several different things. So it openly and readily will connect to different apps where you might have saved things, or using a clipper, one of those article clippers and that kind of thing. And the other one is Obsidian.
okay. Yeah, what's interesting, so like we've been spending we I've been spending a lot of time on Instagram, and I am just a sucker for the ads, like because I'm like, oh my god, that's gonna make my life really great. And
100%.
yeah,
I
so
do
I go
more
down.
purchasing on Instagram than
Well, I
anywhere
don't buy
else.
any. Fortunately, I very rarely buy anything, but I do go down that path. Like, oh my god, that would be great. But I quickly realize, because a lot of the things that I'm looking at are AI tools, and they're like, oh, we will fix your SEO, we will do this, we will do that. So there's these giant promises that if they were able to deliver, would just be amazing. But clearly, they don't. So for me, it's just an interesting exercise to look at these ads to see what they're promoting and promising, and then realizing, yeah, not really. That's not going to actually happen,
The
or
real world.
the real world. Um, but I did make an exception, okay, and so this particular AI app was going to couple several tools that I actually use. So what they were going to say is they're going to take the sharing aspect of Buffer, combine it with the design aspect of Canva, combine it with 12, I think like 12 other things, right? And it was just like, oh, this is like really intriguing to have one tool that I'm currently, it was going to have a Chat GPT equivalent, so it was going to create content, it was going to do graphic design as the Canva, alternative, and it was going to do the sharing as the Buffer alternative. And the price tag was just ridiculously low. So I'm like, oh my god, that's great, and the price tag's not that big, so I'm going to try it, right? And there was I want to say a 7-day money back guarantee. So I'm like, and I can honestly say I was genuinely excited about the prospect of this, and it was one of these, like, I really was excited that if it could do it, it would be amazing. It couldn't do it.
Oh,
So so
I oh.
I make the purchase. I sign up for this thing. The first thing I do is I get into the sharing tool, which is supposedly going to replace Buffer. And we use Buffer all the time. We probably put, 10 or so articles in Buffer a day for various clients, pictures, links, all that kind of stuff. And Buffer's a great tool, but Buffers can get expensive because you're charged by account and use, and it can get expensive fast. So this was like a relatively cheap alternative to Buffer, so we were kind of excited. So the first thing I try to do is I try to launch the share tool, and this is a Buffer replacement, or this is how it is promoted. So the amount of sharing is like 1,000. Like I could share 1,000 articles again. I have like 100 accounts, like all kinds of stuff. Like the numbers were just crazy. So, like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm just going to put everything in one place. This is going to be a great thing. So I go to share my first article. I can't attach an image, and no links. So currently when I use Buffer, if I'm on the article, there's an icon, that is an extension that is on my Chrome browser. Just click that icon. It pulls up Buffer. It, gets the title, image, and link to share. You know what I mean? And we may, modify it. We might add a hashtag or something like that. But that's it. And it's a relatively quick process. This tool, however, I would have to add the image manually each time, which means I have to then go to the article, save the image, upload it,
Oh
and by the way,
boy.
copy and paste the article, the link. So buffer replacement, clearly it's not, right? So I was like, God, like I knew it was too good to be true, right? I just knew it was too good to be true. So so I asked for my money back. They were very good about it. They did refund my money. They gave it back and all that kind of thing. And the founder said, "Would you talk to me about your experience?" And I'm like, "Sure, I'm happy to talk to you." So I get on the phone with the guy, or get on. I think we were on. I don't know if it was Zoom or Microsoft Meetings or something like that, but we get on a chat like this, and he's like, "So what happened? What do you think? And what's going on?" And I said, "Well, if you're going to tout it as a buffer replacement, it has to at least do the very functions that buffer offers. If it doesn't have the functionality that buffer has, then it's not a replacement. You know what I mean? If I'm looking for a buffer replacement, I'm looking for all the functionality of buffer plus more, and the plus more would have been more accounts, more sharing at a more reasonable price, but it didn't have the same functionality that buffer had. So I'm like, this doesn't work for me because I really need those aspects. While this is an interesting tool, I'd have to do too much sort of manual work to get it to do what buffer would do for me automatically. And then we kind of looked at the rest of his offer, and there was about 20 features in this tool. And I said, look, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Pareto principle, which is the 80-20 rule. And I'm like, 80% are only going to use 20% of your tools. And you have all these tools that I can assure you nobody cares about. I'm like focused on 2 or 3 of them, get them, make them the best in the market. If you're going to be a buffer replacement, then you have to, at a minimum, do all the thing it does. And then, then you have some advantages because you're offering it at a lower price, with more capability, that kind of thing. And I said, but, you need to focus. You need to develop 2 or 3 of these, not 20 of these at a time. So he took that information and, promised to get back to me, and we'll see what happens. But, just sort of the AI has all these promises, and we're really excited, and I think it will get there. But this was, like I said, I've been on Instagram with, and right now, like every other article that I'm seeing, it could be because of how I look at things, so it's prompting me to send me more. But every other ad that I'm seeing is an AI tool, right? That's promising to revolutionize my life. And my experience has been they don't. they haven't. They're not there yet. They're they just aren't there. So this sort of segues into the next topic, which is Google just released the Bard-enhanced with Gemini, which is their new generative AI tool. And, I've been using ChatGPT for a while. I've played with Bard a little bit and been unimpressed. Like, it's not, it was worlds inferior to ChatGPT, in my opinion. Like it wasn't, wasn't there yet. So I'm like, all right, so let's give it a shot. And, I got to say, it's pretty cool and I'm impressed. And then what I've come to realize is, so I don't think at this stage that Bard will replace ChatGPT, right? Because there's some things that ChatGPT does really well. However, there's things that I'm realizing that Bard is now really doing really well. And unfortunately, that means I'm probably going to use both for quite a while. Right?
So do tell, what are the differences?
So Bard does not have any AI image generation capabilities at this stage. So I can't create any images. Whereas ChatGPT has incorporated DALL-E, and again, other than the fact that it can't spell, it creates some really interesting images, and we're using that a lot. So, it is, we're using it in lieu of stock footage. So, we post numerous posts a day. We use a lot of stock footage. They're kind of boring and generic. what's interesting is these aren't stock footage, but you definitely know that they're AI generated. They have a look to them that it's clearly AI, right? But I think it's more original and better than stock. It's one level up from stock footage. So, we're using that. Bard does not have that capability. I think that Bard does a really good job because it's Google of incorporating I think Bard does a really good job of like searching and then incorporating information. So if you ask it a question, it has the Google database behind it of data and articles. So, I have found that it does a really good job in research and it does a really good job in article writing. And it's just kind of been interesting because so the last couple of days, I've been running the same query in both ChatGPT and Bard, and it's a toss-up. Sometimes ChatGPT does a better job, sometimes Bard does a better job. So my sense is, sadly, is we'll probably use both for a while and see if one pulls ahead. They both have strengths and weaknesses, I think. Like I said, I think the research is a little bit better on the Gemini product than ChatGPT. ChatGPT does other things, and the nice thing about ChatGPT, it's been around long enough that people have been writing prompts. So we have some pre-built prompts that we can use. That and what's interesting is I've taken those pre-built prompts and used them on Bard, and they work. So and they produce different content. So what's interesting is I've been running kind of both to see which, and then I'll pick and choose like based on the two responses. And then the other day, I created two articles about the same topic, and some of the stuff was really interesting in Bard, and some of the stuff was really interesting in ChatGPT. So then what I did is I took both of them, created a prompt that said, read both of these, pull out the best, and eliminate redundancies and write a new article, and it did. And it was like, so I sort of got the best of both worlds. But it also is like a rabbit hole, and we love rabbit holes. So, we're here for you. We're going down those rabbit holes so you don't have to. But
intervention.
Exactly. Oh my God. But so I'm really, really excited because I think that I was generally unimpressed with Bard up till now. And now I think that it's becoming an interesting tool, and I think it's going to be a very powerful tool. Will it kill ChatGPT? Not yet, not now, maybe down the road, but not currently. I've read the reviews from the release because this is and everybody's talking about it and writing about it. And, the reviews are, it's better, it's good, it's got a ways to go. You know what I mean? I think that, Google is still playing catch up to OpenAI because OpenAI has been on the market for a year. And the product is evolving, and it's amazing because it's really the responses we're getting out of it are pretty cool and useful. So that's been on the radar. I'm trying to think, what was the third thing that we talked about?
Ooh,
ChatGPT, Bard, Gemini. Like, oh my God, there's so much stuff going on. So we went down the Instagram AI advertisements, So there's just a bunch of new stuff that's out there to play with in the midst of the holiday season. My sense with regard to the stuff that they're selling these days, especially around AI, is it's pretty much like everything else that you buy off the internet. It's like lots of promises and the delivery is not quite there. You know what I mean? Do you remember my dog harness story? Did I ever tell you that one? Every time I do buy, I don't buy a lot off of the internet, but when I do, it's a disaster. It's just like, like unless I buy it from, and this is sad because I'm not a big fan, but when I buy from Amazon, I get a quality product. That's the advantage of buying from Amazon. When I buy from a third party that's not through Amazon, it's hit or miss, and there's been a lot of misses.
Yes. I mean, my kitten's harnesses, and I'm going to tell you, they pull hard on those harnesses sometimes. We're going on 2 years. I mean, they roll over in the dirt in those things, and they have been phenomenal. And it's hard to find one that actually fits a cat.
We had the same thing. We bought the harness. We bought a set of harnesses from a third party. It was a nightmare, trying to resolve all that and get our money back. Then went to Google. I went to Amazon, bought harnesses that we still use today that are great, that we would buy again in a heartbeat. I think that's an interesting dilemma, because I'd like to support other retailers. I'd like to support other channels other than Amazon, because apparently Jeff Bezos just bought the biggest. His yacht is so big. This is where you say, how big is it?
I'm not taking the bait.
Like
It
he
could
can't even
be
park
an island.
It is. I mean, he can't park this thing anywhere, and like he has to park it next to tankers, because that's the only other thing that So that he's just got it's just ridiculous how much money this man now has. So I'm not a big proponent of throwing more money towards him. However, the experience, you just can't get the same kind of product and service and guarantees that you get from Amazon. We order stuff, like I don't think I've barely hit send and it's showing up at the door. You know what I mean? It really is. It's the delivery is great. The products, if there's a problem, that they handle it, you get your money back. It's not, it's just a good experience. And what's interesting, just to sort of ramble all over the place, speaking of rabbit holes, is this. I don't think the Saturday before, I think, was Small Business Saturday. And I want to support local merchants and I want to support local businesses. And I think you and I talked about this. However, it's the same thing, like, my experience with the AI thing is you have to have the same level of quality and functionality, in order for me to do that. And I'm willing to pay a little bit more, provided that that level of functionality or whatever is the same. So we have a sort of a high-end grocery store near us. The pricing is ridiculously expensive, and the quality is not that great. We will buy produce, and when we get it home, we realize some of it's moldy or rotten or stuff like that. Like you really have to be careful, and it's just like, for that kind of money, I shouldn't be dealing with that. You know what I mean?
Not at all.
And I'm trying to support local, but if you can't deliver the same quality,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I mean, I go to Costco and I'm getting better produce than I am at the high-end market down the street. And then
That's pretty sad.
And then people wonder, like, why don't these businesses survive? Why don't these businesses thrive? Is because you're charging a lot more money. And I get the reason why they're charging more money. They're not charging more money because they're making tons of it. They're charging more money because they don't have the economies of scale that a Costco has, that they can, their overhead and the impact on any individual product is a lot more, tied to that single product than Costco, which it has, distribution centers and multiple locations, which allows them to distribute the cost of their overhead over, multiple locations. So Costco clearly has a better economy of scale, which allows them to offer the pricing. That being said, would love to support local, would love to support that. However, local has to step up and,
and they've been hit hard.
The same quality. They have. And I mean, it's tough being a brick and mortar business this day. Most of them are still reeling and have not yet fully recovered from the pandemic. When we go to our merchant corridor and talk to folks, people haven't returned to the in-person buying. Part of it's just the convenience of Amazon. The very thing that I've talked about is like, I can go to Amazon, it's cheaper, it's faster, I get it delivered, I don't have to leave my house. Yada, 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 right? Which doesn't bode well for, local merchants.
I'm trying to focus really hard on patronizing bookstores and restaurants. I'm really trying to focus on that so that they can stay in business. because am I going to drive several miles and try to find parking to get an ink cartridge when I could have it tomorrow morning and pick it up off my porch in my pajamas?
Exactly.
Probably going to buy the ink cartridge from Amazon rather than drive to Staples.
But what does that mean? I mean, as far as, so what does the local merchant do to combat that?
Um, they really have to focus on number one, they have to awareness has to be super high. They have to, we have Arizmendi is a local bakery that they're changing locations, but they have an Instagram feed every single day. They're putting something out on Instagram. They haven't been open for 5 months. But
Okay.
they're talking about other locations, and all of their employees have been farmed out to different bakeries or different places, or they're going to
Hmm.
school, so they're doing updates on what all of these employees. It's an employee owned and run place,
Okay. Okay.
so it's a very different concept. But honestly, they haven't been open for 5 months. But every single day, you get to hear something about the progress on the new location, and people's personal stories of what they're doing while they're on hiatus from there, and the new products that they're testing, and that kind of thing. That kind of awareness. I mean, as soon as they open, do you know what it's going to look like in that store? It's going to be a mob scene. So the awareness is really important.
Right. And it also, sort of the personal aspect, like these are people and these are their stories and you get to know them. That is the advantage. When I, go to our local quarter, I know the merchants. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go so far as to say they're my friends. I'm going to say I know them. You know what I mean? And I like them. So, I will go out of my way to try to support them because it's my local neighborhood, it's my community. And I know these people, I know their stories, I know their families. So, we want to support them. We want to do that. I think that really, and we've talked about this just in general when it comes to competing as a small business, is it's about service. If we have some local bakeries as well that produce great product. Number one, bottom line has to be there, right? So, you have to have a good product. And then on top of that, they're friendly, their service is good. It's a good experience when you go into one of their shops and stuff like that. There is no experience with Amazon. You don't know their backstories. You don't care about their backstories. Who we just there is no personal aspect to it, which is fine. It does what it does. But that's really where the local businesses can shine. There are local personalities, there are local businesses. But the basic has to be there. Like they have to be offering a quality product that competes with what's available online. Understanding it might be a little more expensive. However, customer service, just, sort of the ability to touch and feel before we buy, that, is terribly important. You talked about the bookstores, way back in the day, this tells you I'm 100, right, do you remember going to Borders?
Yes, I used
What,
to.
right? Why did you go to Borders?
Because people were experts there and they had a help desk. And if you needed something, they would look it up and they would take you to where it located or order it for you.
Okay. So you went for the customer service, right?
Yes.
So I went because Borders was probably the first one to have the music walls where you could listen to a CD before you bought it. Remember
Oh,
that?
well, and they also had a coffee shop right there. I mean, you could
Right.
sit down
Yeah. So
and peruse a
they were
book.
the first ones to incorporate the coffee shop in, or one of the first ones. Um, Starbucks tried to do that in reverse. I don't think it really worked, but they had a coffee shop and then tried to bring in product. I think Oprah's books were in Starbucks for the longest time. They definitely had Hear music, and so they incorporated that. But when I used to used to live in Chicago, and we have long, cold winters in Chicago, and on Saturday I'd schlep over to Borders because I could spend a couple hours in there. It was nice and warm. Listen to music, there, if you want to look at a book, you can, sort of page through it, read some of it, what I mean, find a quiet corner, to physically touch and feel, to go and listen to music. So that, there are some aspects about shopping in person that are just amazing. The question is, down the road, is people would go to places like that, figure out what they wanted, realize it was more expensive, and then go home and buy it on Amazon.
And that is the fear of many retailers.
Right, that they spend a lot of money for that, to create that experience, and then that people enjoy the experience and then shop elsewhere. Right?
Yes, yeah. Well, one of the advantages for me of going to, we have a Copperfields that's only 4 blocks from my house. And I've gotten to know some of the employees there well enough that if I want to know what is the hottest new fantasy book, rather than looking at 100 titles and book covers and reading their, the inside leaf, I can just say, hey, what is the most popular thing right now? And she'll say, well, are you looking for a story about dragons? Do you want a female hero? They can ask you questions, and they can really pinpoint what is it that you're looking for. What are you interested in?
Very specific genres, yeah.
Here's the book. Or if you want the hottest thing in business books, well, here's the one we can't keep enough of them on the shelf, and here's why. Or if you're looking for something, I recently read a book about the Oxford Dictionary that was one of the most fascinating books I've ever read. And it doesn't sound very scintillating, but it was honestly such a page turner. And she knew me well enough to know, hey, I've got one that I think you might like. And God, I flew through that book so fast. It was really good.
And I had a similar experience, because I think I shared this before, but we have a local bookstore as well, and I went in to talk to her before Small Business Saturday, and I'm pretty sure I conveyed this. So if you've heard this story, that means you're listening to more than one of our podcasts. So if you're not listening to more than one of our podcasts, I'm going to tell the story again. So I go in to talk to her. There's someone at the counter, so I'm just kind of hanging out and waiting, and the woman who had come into the store was looking for a book by an author that was out of print, didn't quite know the title. You gotta love those kind of customers. There's this book, and it's sort of like, it's like when you go in and you hum something at the guy to see if he can help tell you what song it is. Like, yeah, that's a stretch. But so the woman who worked in the bookstore, was patient and listened and said, well, do you think it's this? Do you think it's that? So, she started off with, she was misspelling the author's name. So that made it harder to find. So then they finally figured out the correct spelling of the author's name, which then brought up the books. And then by going through some of the synopsises of the various books, they could figure out which was the one the woman was looking for. It was out of print. However, she has access to other resources where they can, go and search for that. But I mean, I don't, I wasn't in a hurry, but they probably spent 20 minutes trying to figure out who the author was, how to spell their name, what the many titles were, which one of them was the one she was looking for, and then where ultimately to find it, because it was out of stock, out of print. You can't do that on Amazon. I mean, that personal experience. So that's clearly where and how local businesses can differentiate is in the customer service.
Yes. Or when you go to your favorite restaurant and they tell you, oh, we don't have your favorite salad today. Can I suggest this?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, or just when you go to your favorite restaurant. I have a favorite restaurant, and when the woman sees me, she knows what I like. She already puts my order. She doesn't even ask her. It's like the usual. Yes, the usual. Just because they know you, they know what you want. They know the experience. So, so we led off with some new technologies and the fact that AI has taken over the world. And while it holds tremendous promise, there's some areas it hasn't quite gotten there yet. It will, I think, and it's pretty exciting when we will try to use all of them and share them with you. You had talked about the second brain and that concept, and gave some resources there. I mentioned sort of Bard and Gemini, and sort of a little bit of a comparison of, that to Chat GPT. I don't think it's going to replace Chat GPT anytime soon, but I think it's a nice compliment, and I think they do slightly different things. And then we sort of moved on to the where does local business stand in in all of this. And again, I still go back to local business has the ability to differentiate in customer service.
Yes. Yes. And yes, what each of us individually has to learn is how to create some sort of balance between that customer service and physical contact and what we need tomorrow, like ink cartridges.
Yeah, I mean, there is a tremendous convenience. It was kind of interesting because we had posted something about shopping online versus shopping
Locally.
locally, or that kind of thing. And somebody brought up the point that sort of the climate impact of that, right? And what it turns out is it's almost a wash, because if you shop locally, that means you get in your car, you're creating that sort of impact on the environment. If you shop online, they're driving a van to your house, and using an ungodly amount of packaging. That is the one thing, that's the advantage of shopping locally, is I can get something. Sometimes I don't even get a bag. Like, I don't need it. I'll either bring one of my own, or I don't need a bag, depending on what the item is. And,
right.
I have gotten packages from Amazon that contain something really small that's been triple boxed, and, like, this giant thing comes in, and like, it's this. And, the amount of packaging that has been, added to this, clearly not good for the environment. So there's all kinds of offsets as far as, when you shop online, there's a tremendous amount of packaging. You shop locally, you get in your car and all that kind of stuff. So I think they're a wash at this point. So, and I'm sure that someone can argue otherwise, more scientifically argue, one over the other. But for now, we're just going to leave it at a wash.
Yes. Great discussion, Mike.
So we will continue to play with these tools and tell you what we experience, and we'd love to hear what you're experiencing and what you think of these new tools and where you're at. We will try to avoid buying stuff off of the Instagram feed. We just can't seem to learn our lesson on that. Like, because that's great. This is going to solve all my problems. And on a final and closing note, stay away from the pumpkin spice cookies. They'll kill you.
Stay alive,
Bye, everybody.
everybody.
Exactly. Bye, everybody.